Pastor Ian Sweeney, you've come back from the General Conference session in San Antonio. There were a lot of people looking at that session with expectation, particularly for the debates over the role of women and whether divisions could ordain women, if appropriate, in their territories. What exactly happened there?
There was a lot of discussion, obviously. On a personal reflection, I felt that, as what happened with the TOS committee, the Theology of Ordination Study Committee, people already had their opinions and their views. And even though we devoted a whole day to the very discussion of women's ordination, I don't think anybody's view was changed by virtue of the discussions. I would submit that maybe people felt better just airing what they believed. But the truth was, nobody changed their opinion, I believe, who arrived in San Antonio and during the period of discussion. And so really the vote was taken, permit me to suggest, on what people had already firmly believed in their hearts.
And of course it was an open vote. There was no direction from GC leadership to vote yes or no. And we know the results was a no vote. Divisions have not been given the authority to decide in their area whether it's appropriate or not to ordain women. And I guess that then floats down in our division, in the Trans-European division, down to the unions and where you sit as union president. What do you see as the repercussions, if any, from the vote that was taken?
For some people, they think that we're reversing back on something. I mean, the position where we're at right now is, for example, we have female elders who are ordained as elders in local churches. This was an action from the 1970s, reaffirmed in the 1984, I believe, that female elders can be ordained in the church. That hasn't been touched, that has not been reversed, that will still continue to be the case. In the British Isles right now, we have some 45% of our congregations that we know of that have female elders, and I would assume or presume that many of them have been ordained. So nothing changes there. We also have female pastors working within the British Union Conference and indeed around the Trans-European Division territory. They are still serving as female pastors. Nothing has changed there. They are not ordained, of course. They are commissioned pastors, but actually commissioning is not only or exclusively for females, as we do have males who are commissioned to the gospel ministry. And being commissioned is actually the recognition of the church of a male or female's call to the gospel ministry for a lifelong commitment.
The whole issue and study over the last 5 years has raised the profile of the debates, and perhaps in a sense you are now the leader of a church that is more divided than it was a couple of years ago, because there are those that are very pro we should be ordaining women pastors, and there are those who, again, through their Bible study, have come to the conclusion, no, that's not something we should be doing. How do you lead a church that's got those two diverse views and, as you say, has got 45% of its elders as female, a considerable number of female pastors? Is there a way forward?
I believe there is. If we are looking for uniformity, then we are never going to have that. We hardly have we don't have uniformity in many things, worship style and expressions, and people can fall out on such things as that, and yet we can both say, or depending on where we are on the spectrum of worship, we're both worshipping God. I think we have to be realistic. In many parts of our life and experience, we do not experience uniformity, but we have unity. In our marriage relationships, I do not agree with my spouse Jennifer on many, many things, and she doesn't agree with me on many, many things. But we are still in a loving and unified and united marriage. And I think the same can exist within the church as well. It's not everything that has to be uniform to express unity. And I think that we can express that within the church. So, for example, 45%, as I've said, of churches have female elders. There are churches, congregations, who honestly do not desire or wish to have female elders. And we have to respect the wishes of a congregation. We shouldn't be seen to be imposing upon a congregation that which they are not willing to accept or are not prepared to accept at this time.
If your daughter so chose to go and study theology at Newbold College and train for ministry, what advice would you be giving her today?
I would encourage her to study. If that is where God is leading and calling, in the British Union, across the division, and actually I believe across the world, we are encouraging, and we do want to, when I say we, I mean the church, we do want to affirm those whom God has called. And clearly, God has called many men as well as many women, and to leave a life's career or to change careers or to send your life in a direction of ministry is not one that is taken lightly. It's not done for the money. It is not done for the prestige. And clearly, if God has placed upon somebody's heart the impression that they want to enter into full-time ministry, we encourage such persons to do that, whether they be male or female.
So 2 very short final questions. What do you say to those within your sphere of influence that are absolutely opposed to women in ministry, to elders in ministry? What message do you have to them?
The message I have to them is that I worked as a local pastor. I won't identify the person, but I worked with an elder many years ago who was very much opposed to female elders. And in fact, he left the congregation where he was at as a point of principle, as a point of his conscientious objection, one might say, and worshipped in a congregation where I was the pastor who did not have female elders. And I have to say, he was one of the best elders I have ever worked with. He respected the decision of the local congregation which he left, but he didn't leave with a whole lot of warfare and, contention. He just said, in my heart of hearts, I cannot do this. And I think that we need to have a greater understanding and respect to people who differ with us, whether we are pro or anti the ordination of female pastors. We should listen to each other and treat one another with respect and understand that we can be united, as I've said, in our diversity.
And so with that, putting the question on its head, what words do you have to our female pastors, some of whom are feeling discouraged at the moment, and to female elders who, again, may be feeling under some pressure?
I read, and I can't find the quotation right now, but I'd read of Ellen White's experience and of her own testimony that she believed she had been ordained of God. And that what I would like to affirm to our female pastors is that what God has called you to ultimately is the real thing of their calling. What we do as a church is recognize what God has called an individual to do or to be. And I would hope that in time, and sometimes these things do take time, it may be a generation hence, but before the Lord comes, unless the Lord comes in between. But I believe that our female colleagues should ever remember that their call came from God, and to whomever God calls, He will equip and give strength to ministry. It's never going to be easy, even for our male colleagues, as we see in the prophets. They were called to a prophetic ministry, and it wasn't easy, but God equipped them along the road. And I think that God will today equip our ministers, female pastors, who have been called for ministry purposes.
Pastor Sweeney, thank you very much.